I stayed late at work, and my mom texted, "We gave away your room, family comes first. Be glad we let you stay." Then she said, "Your brother's starting a business. You'll cover his startup costs. For $1,700, due Monday." I told her, not happening. What I did next shocked everyone. Hey Reddit, I'm 32M, and what I'm about to share has been building for a long time. I've been turning this over in my head for weeks now, trying to figure out how everything unraveled so fast, or maybe how everything that was always a little crooked finally collapsed in a way I couldn't ignore. I don't think I come from a bad family exactly, but let's just say balance has never really been our strong suit. I was raised by a single mom, Lorraine, who's 58 now and has always prided herself on doing what she had to for her kids. And I respect that. Truly, I know she had it rough. But somewhere along the way, that sense of sacrifice started to blend into a kind of manipulative martyrdom. It stopped being about what was good for the family and became more about what made her feel needed. I'm the older of two boys. My younger brother, Carter, is 28. Carter has always had a knack for making our mom feel like he needed saving, and she loved that. While I was the quiet, responsible one, Carter was the emotional whirlwind, big dreams, big messes, and somehow big forgiveness every time he let someone down. We grew up in a modest split-level house in a small town, nothing fancy, but it was ours. After high school, I worked full-time and took community college classes at night. I got my degree the slow way, then moved out at 25 to take a job in logistics an hour and a half away. That's where I've been living and working until recently. Carter, on the other hand, bounced around. He enrolled in 3 different colleges and dropped out of all of them. He tried door-to-door sales, a YouTube channel, working as a DJ, and even had a brief stint where he claimed he was designing an app that was going to change everything. None of it stuck for more than a few months. My mom's answer to all this? He just hasn't found his path yet. He's creative. You were always more linear. I never knew if that was meant as a compliment. Anyway, fast forward to late last year. The lease on my apartment ended abruptly. My landlord decided to sell, and I had 60 days to find a new place. I did some searching, but prices had gone up a lot since I'd signed my original lease, and I didn't want to rush into signing something long-term just because I was under pressure. I mentioned this during a visit home for a cousin's birthday, and of course, my mom immediately jumped in. "You should just move back here for a little while," she said, patting my arm like it was already settled. "We've got the guest room. You'll save money, and you won't have to stress about rushing. And Carter's really been missing you lately." I was reluctant. Not because I didn't appreciate the offer, but because I knew what moving back would mean. It meant walking back into a house where my needs were always going to come second, where Carter's issues were always going to take center stage. But she wore me down. Said all the right things. "It's just temporary. You'll have your own space. We'll stay out of each other's way." And honestly, I was tired. I've been working 10-hour shifts, packing, and juggling apartment viewings every weekend. So I agreed. I moved back in early January. The room she offered me was technically the guest room, but she'd cleared out space for me to bring in a few things. It wasn't luxurious, but it was fine. There was a desk, a bed, a closet that stuck whenever you tried to open it, but it was mine for the time being. The first couple of weeks were okay. I got into a rhythm: work, home, dinner, sleep. I did my own grocery shopping, kept to myself, and tried to stay out of the way. But it didn't take long for things to start slipping. Carter had taken over the living room with what he called his workspace. It looked more like a mess of tangled cords, half-empty coffee mugs, and ring lights. He said he was building something big, but I never saw him actually do anything besides scroll through social media and pace around talking to himself. At first, I tried to ignore it. I had my own space, after all. But Carter had a habit of wandering into the guest room without knocking, sometimes to ask for advice, sometimes just to sit and vent about how nobody understood his vision. It got awkward fast. I told him I needed more privacy. He nodded and said he understood. Then, one Saturday morning, I came home from a run and found a stranger sleeping on my bed. Apparently, Carter's friend Lucas was in between places and needed somewhere to crash for a night or two. No one had asked me. My mom just shrugged and said, "It's just for the weekend. You have the couch, don't you?" That moment stuck with me, not just because of the invasion of privacy, but because of the way it was handled, like I was some tenant overstaying his welcome, not their son who had been helping himself and others his whole life. I bit my tongue. Again, I told myself I could stick it out another month or two. But over the next few weeks, things just got worse. My groceries disappeared. My toiletries were used without permission. Carter borrowed my work laptop, just for a minute, and left it sitting in the kitchen overnight. Every time I pushed back, I was met with, "Come on, we're family," or worse, "Why are you being so difficult?" Then, last week, I had to work late to finish prepping for an inventory inspection. I didn't get back until nearly 9:30 p.m. I was exhausted, hungry, and just wanted to crash. I pulled into the driveway, saw an extra car parked outside, and felt a knot in my stomach. Sure enough, when I got inside, the hallway was crowded with boxes, my boxes. I stood there for a minute, staring at them, trying to process what I was looking at. My clothes, my books, my electronics, neatly stacked by the stairs. Like someone was preparing to move me out. I checked my phone. One new message from my mom. "We gave away your room. Carter's friend Lucas is staying for a while. Family comes first. You can sleep on the couch. Be glad we let you stay this long." I just stared at the screen. For a full minute, I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I wasn't angry yet, not even hurt, just numb. Then, about 2 hours later, while I was sitting on the back porch trying to clear my head, I got another text. "Carter needs help with his business. He has a real plan this time. He needs startup money, 4,700 by Monday." That's when something shifted. I hadn't even unpacked my bag from work. I walked back inside, past Carter and Lucas, now comfortably watching a movie in the room that had once been mine, and went up to my mom, who was folding laundry in the upstairs hallway like everything was completely normal. I asked her, "You gave away my room without even telling me?" She looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. "Carter's trying to build a future. Lucas needs support right now. You're almost out anyway, aren't you?" I said quietly. I didn't agree to cover Carter's startup. "And I'm not sleeping on the couch." She shrugged and said something I'll never forget. "Well, if you don't want to be part of the family, maybe this isn't the place for you." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I didn't recognize the person standing in front of me. I stood there in that narrow upstairs hallway, still in my work boots, surrounded by the scent of laundry detergent and that ever-present artificial lavender plug-in my mom insists on using in every outlet. It was quiet, except for the dryer rumbling in the next room and the distant sound of Carter laughing at something on TV. I said nothing for a long moment. My mom had gone back to folding towels like we hadn't just had a conversation that cracked something open inside me. I don't think she realized what she just said. Or maybe she did. Maybe she said it to push me, to guilt me into giving in again. It wouldn't have been the first time. "Maybe this isn't the place for you." She said it like she was offering me a way out, like I'd gotten in the way of her perfect little narrative, and she was gently nudging me toward the exit. But there was no kindness in it. There was no recognition of everything I'd done, everything I was doing. I've been supporting myself since I was 19. I paid off my student loans without asking for a dime. I helped her with car repairs 2 years ago when she called crying because the radiator blew and she didn't have the money. I sent Carter money when he said his gig work wasn't covering groceries. I'd been reliable, quiet, self-sufficient. And now somehow, I was the burden. That realization came on slowly, like the feeling of standing too close to something that's been smoldering for hours, warm at first, then hot, then too hot to ignore. I finally spoke. Calmly, evenly. "You could have told me. I was at work. You could have picked up the phone." She didn't look up from the towels. There wasn't time. Lucas was already on his way. "You're barely here anyway." I let out a breath. "I come home every night." She gave me that familiar, dismissive little shrug. "You stay in your room. You don't even eat with us. You act like you're not part of this family." Part of the family. That phrase always had strings attached in this house. Family meant doing what Carter needed. Family meant sacrificing without question. And if you didn't, well, then you were the selfish one. I left her there with her towels and went downstairs. I needed space. I needed time to think. I stepped out onto the porch. It was already dark, and the air had that quiet, cold stillness that comes late at night in a small town. I sat on the porch steps and stared out at the yard, which was mostly dead grass and a few uneven stepping stones leading to the shed. I thought about everything. About how I'd made compromises from the moment I moved back in. About how every little promise of "it's just temporary" had unraveled. About how Carter had coasted through life, always cushioned, always excused, and how I'd been slowly edged out of my own space without so much as a conversation. My phone buzzed again. It was Carter this time. "Hey bro, can we talk numbers tonight? Gotta register the LLC and put down for a website domain. Also, Lucas thinks we need like 2 ring lights for the videos." I just stared at it. "No, sorry about your stuff." No mention of moving into my space. Just entitlement, plain and simple. Like I was a bank loan officer he was sure would say yes. Carter had always been good at dreaming, at convincing people he was on the brink of something big. I remembered when he told our aunt he was going to become a sneaker designer. She wired him money. He spent it on concert tickets and a used camera he broke 2 weeks later. But this was different. This time, I was the one he expected to fund the dream. And worse, Mom was treating it like a foregone conclusion. I didn't go back inside that night. I sat there until nearly midnight, just letting the cold keep me awake. When I finally did go in, the living room was empty. Lucas had taken over the guest room. My guest room. My things were still in boxes along the hallway. Not a single person had offered to help move them. No one asked if I needed anything. I slept on the couch with a blanket that smelled faintly of cat despite the fact we've never owned one. I didn't sleep much. My back ached. My mind wouldn't settle. By morning, I'd made my decision. I got up early, before anyone else was awake. I made coffee, black, the way I like it, and sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. I scrolled through old texts, bank transfers, grocery receipts, little signs of how long I've been propping things up. And then I started writing a list. Not just of things to pack, a list of everything. How many times I'd lent Carter money, 8 times in the last 3 years, totaling just over $2,000. How many times I'd paid for my mom's prescriptions when her insurance ran short. How many favors. How many overlooked slights. How many times I'd put my own needs second just to keep the peace. I made the list because I needed to see it. Because somewhere along the way, I convinced myself I wasn't giving that much. That I was just doing what a good son, a good brother, was supposed to do. But it was a lot. And it had never been enough. At around 8:30, Carter came stumbling into the kitchen wearing my old hoodie. "Yo," he said, yawning. "So I was thinking, if you front the website cost, Lucas can do the graphics for free." I didn't even answer. I just picked up my phone and said, "I'm not paying for your business." He blinked. "Wait, what?" "I'm not paying for it," I repeated. "Not the website, not the startup, not the LLC. Not a dime." Carter laughed like he thought I was joking. "Come on, man. It's not even that much. And you make good money, right? You always talk about how you're saving for something. Think of it as investing in family." That word again. Family. Their favorite tool. I shook my head. "It's not an investment. It's a handout. One that you expect without earning." He looked genuinely offended. Like I'd insulted him by not opening my wallet. "You're being really negative right now," he said. That's when Mom walked in. She must have overheard part of it, because she already had that defensive look in her eyes. "What's going on?" she asked, glancing between us. "He's refusing to help," Carter said. "I'm not refusing," I said quietly. "I'm declining." "That's not the same thing." Mom crossed her arms. "We thought you'd want to support him. He's finally found something he's passionate about." I looked at both of them, standing there in my hoodie, in my house, surrounded by my boxed-up life like I'd already been erased. The moment I said no, calmly, firmly, and without apology, I could see something flicker in both their expressions. My mom's mouth pressed into a tight, familiar line. She only made that face when she felt out of control but didn't want to show it. Carter, on the other hand, looked almost amused, like he was waiting for the punchline. Like any second now, I'd cave. When I didn't, Carter chuckled and shook his head. "All right," he said, dragging the word out. "All right, man. I mean, if that's how you want to play it." I didn't answer. I just looked at Mom. "Is this how it's going to be now? You and Carter making decisions about my life without talking to me?" Her tone was clipped. "You were never supposed to stay here this long. But you invited me. Because I thought you'd help out. Not just take up space." That stung more than I expected. Not because it surprised me, but because of how casually she said it. Carter grabbed a banana from the counter and leaned against the fridge like he owned the place. "We're just asking you to support something bigger than yourself, bro." But I guess that's too much. I stood up. Slowly. Quietly. "You're right," I said. "It is too much." And then I left the kitchen. I went upstairs, past the boxes of my things still sitting where they'd been dumped, and into the little office space at the end of the hall, technically my mom's, but she never used it for anything but old paperwork and coupons. I locked the door behind me, pulled out my phone, and made 3 calls. The first was to a moving company. The second was to my friend Devin, who had recently moved into a 2-bedroom condo closer to the city. I'd helped him move, and I remembered him saying the second room was just sitting empty. "Absolutely," he said, without hesitation. "You can crash here until you find your own place. No rent. Just keep the dishes out of the sink." The third call was to a storage facility near Devon's place. They had a 10 by 10 unit available. I booked it on the spot. Then I started packing. I didn't make a big announcement. I didn't argue. I didn't even answer the knock on the door when Carter tried to talk. I spent the next 2 days quietly gathering everything I owned: clothes, books, work gear, my old keepsake boxes from college, and sealing them up. I made a point of taking back everything I'd brought into the house when I moved in. The extra phone charger in the living room, the blender in the kitchen, the shelves in the laundry room I'd bought so Mom could organize her supplies. Even the router, I'd set up the Wi-Fi when I got there because theirs had been painfully slow. When the movers arrived that Saturday morning, Carter was still asleep, and Mom was out running errands. I moved everything out in 3 hours. Everything. I left behind nothing that belonged to me. Not a scrap. Not even the spare light bulbs I'd brought from my old place. By the time I was done, the guest room, my room, was completely empty. The kitchen looked bare without my cookware. The office was stripped of the printer I'd installed and the ergonomic chair I'd lent Mom. The living room router was gone. I left the modem in its place with a sticky note that simply read, "You'll need a new provider. My account is closed." I left a short note on the kitchen table. "I've moved out. Do not contact me for money. Good luck with the business." I turned off the lights, locked the door behind me, and drove away. But I wasn't finished. Because what they didn't know was that in the process of helping out, over the years, I'd kept everything. Every Venmo payment. Every PayPal transfer. Every instance where they had said, in writing, that they would pay me back soon. Every time Carter had said he was borrowing money for just a little bit. I'd never asked for it back. But I'd kept the records. I spent the next few nights going through all of it, building a timeline, printing receipts, highlighting text threads. I had screenshots, emails, transaction IDs. Then I drafted a formal document outlining the total. $2,482 from Carter, $719 from Mom, including her temporary borrow to cover her overdue utilities last winter. And a final note at the bottom: these amounts were offered with the intent of being repaid. They never were. I will be seeking repayment in small claims court if I do not hear from you within 30 days. I mailed it. Certified. The certified letter was just the first move. I didn't expect them to pay. That wasn't the point. It was about changing the rules of the game. No more quiet compliance. No more guilt. No more pretending this was just family stuff, when, really, it was a long pattern of entitlement. They received the letter 3 days later. I got the first call that evening. From my mom. At first, she didn't even address the letter. She started with her usual tactic, calm but disappointed. "This is so unlike you," she said. "You've never acted this way before." I let the silence stretch. "I mean, really? You're threatening legal action? Over family?" I finally spoke. "You and Carter made decisions about my life. You moved me out of my room without asking, expected me to fund a business, and didn't even think I deserved a conversation. That's not family. That's control." She sighed. "So you're just going to walk away from all of us? Over money?" "No," I said. "I walked away because I realized I was never part of the picture unless I was giving something." She hung up without another word. I didn't hear from her again for a while. But Carter? Carter couldn't let it go. He called, texted, messaged me on every platform I had. Most of it was a mix of outrage and manipulation. "You're really doing this to your own brother? I told Lucas you were good for it. We already started building the site. What kind of man goes after his own mom like that? You think you're better than us now?" I didn't respond. Instead, I filed the small claims paperwork, attached the documentation, set the court date. When the notice was delivered, Carter finally stopped texting. The hearing was set for 4 weeks out. I figured they wouldn't show. They'd probably scoff, say I was bluffing. But I was ready. I spent every night after work preparing, putting together copies of bank statements, itemized lists, a timeline of communications. I rehearsed how I'd explain it all to a judge. Not as some bitter family dispute, but as a breach of informal financial agreements, ones made in writing, multiple times. Then something happened I didn't expect. A week before the hearing, Carter's former business partner, Lucas, reached out to me. He messaged me through LinkedIn, of all places. Said he was sorry for the way things played out, and that he didn't realize how much pressure Carter was putting on me. He told me they'd had a falling out. Apparently, Carter had promised Lucas that I was their investor and would bankroll the entire startup. He showed me fake texts, Lucas wrote. Said you'd committed already. I didn't realize until later. That little detail changed things. because it meant Carter hadn't just overstepped, he'd misrepresented me to others as a financial backer. It gave me stronger legal footing. It also gave me peace of mind. I hadn't overreacted. I hadn't imagined the pressure. The day of the hearing came. I walked into the courtroom wearing my work clothes, nothing flashy, just a pressed shirt and slacks, and sat across from Carter and my mom. They didn't say a word to me. Carter looked irritated. My mom looked smaller somehow, like the gravity of the situation had finally settled in. I won't bore you with the full proceedings, but I will say this. The judge took one look at the records I brought in, timestamped transactions, text messages stating, "I'll pay you back," even voice recordings from voicemails, and ruled in my favor. Carter was ordered to pay me the full $2,482 over a 6-month period in monthly installments. The court didn't grant repayment from my mom because hers hadn't been documented as clearly, but the message was still clear. The moment we stepped out into the hallway afterward, she looked at me like she didn't recognize me. "You really went through with it," she said. I nodded. "I told you I would." Carter didn't say a word. He walked off in the opposite direction. Later that week, my mom sent me a long text message. It was full of the same old lines she always used, but this time, it felt different. She said she hoped one day I'd understand how divisive I'd been, that I had turned a temporary misunderstanding into a war. She said she was sorry it had to come to this, but it was clear she was hurt and defensive, wrapped up in her own version of what had happened. I read it once, twice. Then I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, though I admit I felt plenty of that. I didn't reply because I was just tired, emotionally drained from years of bending, giving, and being expected to give more. I was exhausted from the constant feeling that no matter what I did, it would never be enough. In the weeks since the court hearing, I moved fully into Devin's condo. It's a small place, but it's mine, or at least, it's a space where I don't have to worry about being shoved aside. Quiet. Peaceful. I come home from work, make my dinner, put my shoes neatly by the door, and no one touches them or tells me they belong somewhere else. No one questions my right to be there. Carter hasn't contacted me since the court date. I don't know if he's angry or just finally realized there's no leverage left over me. But last week, the first payment showed up in my Venmo account. No note, no message, just the transfer. For $100, the first installment of what he owes. I haven't decided yet if I'll send a thank you or ignore it. Part of me thinks it doesn't matter. It's not about the money anymore. I might use that money to finally take a weekend trip somewhere new, or just start an emergency fund for myself. Something that's mine and mine alone. What matters most is that I finally put up a boundary. When I didn't back down from when they pushed against it. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing on my own ground. I won't lie, there are moments I still wonder if I went too far. If turning family disagreements into legal battles means I lost something more important, I think about the dinners I won't have with Mom and Carter. The birthdays I'll celebrate without them. The years of shared history that feel suddenly fragile. But I also know that I lost a lot already, my space, my dignity, and my sense of being valued. And when I stood up for myself, it wasn't just about money. It was about respect, recognition, and finally, peace. So, Reddit, I'm turning to you. Am I the bad guy here? Was I wrong to escalate what started as a family disagreement into a legal matter? Or was it long overdue that someone finally called out the toxic behavior that had been disguised as family for far too long? I want to hear your thoughts. Because after all this, I'm still sorting through what it all means. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more real-life family drama and revenge tales, make sure to like and subscribe. And I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up to toxic family members or set hard boundaries? Drop your story or thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.